Good morning. Today is the 13th of Elul, the 31st? 30th of August. And we're on page Yudalid here of the Maimer that we've been learning for many weeks. But we're still within the time frame because we have to finish it. The end that we don't have that much left, but we have to finish by end of Sukkos. That's the last time, but we'll finish, I think, earlier. In any case, so we were discussing the difference between recognition and between knowledge, and we said that when someone has true recognition, akara, the way he called it here, then he can recognize the person and to know what kind of wisdom he has, really. And then he knows if this thing that he's doing is something small by him or something great. Right? If I look at, I think I mentioned Da Vinci, and I'm not sure who, and I look at his drawings, so in the beginning I say, oh wow, he's a very wise man, but okay, he's a painter. But then you learn that this guy's paintings were only an expression, or I don't know if only an expression, but they were certainly founded on his incredible inquisitive knowledge of the universe. Everything around him he studied, and he was an expert architect, he was an expert mechanic. I just recently was in Venice. We went there everybody in Italy claims the fame of having Da Vinci there, so I think he was born in Venice. He didn't do most of his work in Venice, but they have a museum of Da Vinci, and so they have many of his contraptions, like all the stuff that he built. Not the originals; they reconstructed them from his notebooks. But then you look at his paintings and you say, he's very successful, he's very good. It's because he has so many other wisdoms. So why is this important for us? This recognition of a person's true abilities. V'chen ha'inyan lemala, we're at the very end of Yudalid. So it is above, meaning by God. Shelefi ha'emet, chokhmah shebema'aseh bereshit. There's great wisdom in creation. A person who comes to know God through creation, he says, oh, look, God is such a great creator. He's such a great architect of physics and chemistry and biology and everything that he did. Look at this amazing thing that he created. And you see all this, and you're really, really impressed. And then the sages in the Zohar, it says something amazing, which, by the way, I don't think there's any other source. The Zohar, I think, was the first one to truly state this. And ze amru lav orcha de malka lishtai b'milin dehediota. It is not proper for a king to deal with bureaucracy. Milin dehediota. Milin dehediota. Tufse deshtari. You have this great king, and he's the one who's writing all the documents of the bureaucracy of the kingdom. Because that's in the end what the creation is. Dealing with creation, thinking about the laws of physics, of chemistry, of biology. Building all this up relative to who this king is like a modern king who would want to see every single form written in every single department of every single ministry. What? No king would ever do that. No head of state would ever do that. Because it's not proper. You have to run the kingdom from above. But it's not just that. What do you mean run it from above? I used to think, when I was younger, to run it from above means to tell everybody else what to do. So it wasn't so distant for me to think that maybe he wants to see every single form. But to run the kingdom really means being in contact with people. It's a whole different level. It's a whole different level of giving over your knowledge, of your wisdom. It's a level of stewarding people, not documents. But if you call Hashem the creator and that's where you stop, it only means, or let's put it this way, that if you know God only through creation, then all you have is knowledge of God. But you've never met God. Because this is not God yet. This, in fact, how is this stated in the sages for many, many generations? in ways that, to the modern mindset, they sound a little foolish. You have to say the truth. They built it this way. They said, oh, God, on the second day He created angels, and then He told this angel do this, and this angel do that, and so they run the bureaucracy. That was the way that the sages made the same statement. And what does He do? if they run everything, so what does He have to do? He makes shidduchim. Shidduchim, that's something else. That's true wisdom already. No, so what does He do? He gives the Torah. Making shidduchim is another way of saying He gives the Torah. So what are we saying? That today we say all this is like a watch. He built the watch. He doesn't have to take care of it. What do you mean? He's not involved? Of course He's involved. Of course everything is Him. But what we're trying to get across is not that He's not running the show in terms of the physical aspect of reality. We're trying to say that this is the lowest expression of godliness that there is. So today we say it like, instead of angels, instead of using all that language, we say God set up a whole mechanism. But mechanism has a problem because mechanism sounds like it's autonomous. And we don't want to say that it's really autonomous, because in the end, what we're getting at is not whether He needs to put 20% of His time into it, 30%, that's irrelevant to God. What we're trying to say is that creation only reflects the lowest level of His involvement. Meaning, it doesn't require very much. Not in terms of time. It doesn't require very much, or it doesn't reveal very much of who God is. So that's what the Zohar is saying with the statement, Lav ocha de malka lishtai b'milei de idiota. It's not the way of a king to deal with the bureaucracy. So all this, the chokhmah sheb'ma'aseh b'reshit, the wisdom that's put into nature, if you study nature, you will only get to so much of a knowledge of who God is, but you won't get to recognition. V'chokhmah ilah, but the higher, the supernal wisdom, what's that? That's the divine wisdom. That's the wisdom of the Torah. Hainu ma shemeromam u'menusa migeder olamot, by which He is aloof, He's above, He's completely detached from these worlds, from these physical worlds that He created. V'rak nigla lenishmot Yisrael b'shat matan Torah kanal. But He reveals this higher nature only to the souls of Israel when He gave the Torah. Moshe Katuv, as it says about the giving of the Torah, panim bepanim nigla Hashem elechem. Hashem showed Himself to you face to face. What does it mean face to face? He doesn't have a face, but He revealed Himself. He revealed His true being, so you would recognize shemakirim amitutam tzayer be'atzmo. That so that the souls could recognize, not the souls, not the people, the souls could recognize the painter, and they could recognize Him in everything, and not just in creation, not just in the physical sense. Now, does this mean that that science is wrong? No, it's perfectly fine, but it paints a picture of the Creator, which is the lower wisdom, which is almost like an afterthought for Him. It doesn't really reveal who He is. Rambam says that to come to love and fear God, you have to look at nature. Why doesn't He say you have to study Torah? It's a very interesting thing. Why does He say that? It doesn't make sense in Chassidus. You read that statement in Hilchos Yesodei Torah, the very beginning. You're like, what in the world did you want? Why didn't you come and say that if you want to love and fear God, you should learn Torah? Mm-hmm. I don't have a good answer. I think I used to have a good answer, but I don't remember it now. And this all comes from the supernal wisdom, and that's what the Zohar means when it says that Torah emerges from the supernal wisdom. It's not trying to say that nature is not wisdom. It is wisdom, it is God, it is everything, but it's the lower facet. And lower facet means a lighter knowledge, but not true recognition. And that's what the Tikkun Zohar means when it says, you are wise, but not in known wisdom. What is the known wisdom? The known wisdom is the wisdom of nature. is the wisdom that anyone can study. But you are known, where are you known from? Ant Hakim, we know that you're wise, in a way that's not like that, so that there's a higher wisdom. In other words, by studying nature, we can't come to this supernal wisdom. In fact, a scientist could never come to the conclusion that there must be a Torah. From studying nature, he would never come to that conclusion. Because nature seems to be fine by itself. It works. So God expressed himself in nature. Where do you get from that? Where would you get the supposition that there should be also a higher wisdom, which would be captured in the Torah? And that's why God says to Moses, regarding the patriarchs who only knew God through nature, that my name Havaya, the higher four-letter name, this I did not reveal to them. I did not make known to them. Meaning, I did not give them recognition of this higher aspect. The sages use the language recognition. They say, Ben Shalosh Hikir Avram et Boro. That when Abraham was 3 years old, he recognized God. So they use the word recognition. He says, Hainu bishon chachamim nikra ze gam ken hakara. He says, not always are the words in Hebrew always distinct. And in the language of the sages, knowledge of this form is also called recognition. Now, I personally don't like these kvetches. You can't do this. You really have to be consistent. So to really study this, and I haven't, I sort of take what Rav Ginsburg taught me, and I wrote a whole book on it. Actually, it's called Natural Consciousness. And there I've seen that consistently throughout Chasidus there's a difference between yediyah and akara, between knowledge and recognition. And sometimes you need someone who's a real grammarian to figure these things out. I don't know if Rabbi Hillel was like that, so I don't know if he could go back and really reconstruct the usage of these words during different generations. But you need somebody like the Malbim. The Malbim is very good at it. That's what he does. So to really complete this statement, you'd have to go to the Malbim and see how do the sages use the word recognition. This is a medrash that says Avram was 3 years old when he recognized God. So you have to see whether they really meant the word recognition the way you're using it. But regardless of the usage of the words, it's clear that there are two types of wisdom. That everybody agrees. The higher and the lower. So he says like this, and I have proof for this. My proof for again, without getting into the grammar, without getting into the usage of the words over the generations, but they also said, the sages said in the Medrash, how do they describe Abraham's background for becoming cognizant of God? That they said that it was like someone who sees a building on fire, and he says, there must be, or in this case, the way people usually understand it, I always forget that the usual understanding is, he saw a castle and he saw a light in the window. Right? That's the way people usually understand this metaphor. So he saw this window, this light in the window, and he said, there must be someone living here. So someone owns this place. It's being taken care of. So what is he talking about? What's the castle? The castle is a metaphor for the world. So Avram looked at the world. So from that we see that this is lower wisdom. It's the wisdom of the physical creation. And that was the source for all his recognition that they're talking about. So that fits the general gist here of our explanation, says Rabbi Hillel. But really, even though they use the word hakara here, recognition, like we said, recognizing God through, or knowing God through mundane reality is only knowledge of God, it's not recognition. Only Only now, once I take you out of Egypt, now that I'm going to take you out of Egypt, and I'm going to reveal myself to you at Mount Sinai, says God to Moses, now you will come to truly know who I am. Because now you will know the supernal name Havaya, the higher Havaya, like we said, Havaya, like in the 13 measures of compassion. And this will already be a recognition of God. And following this explanation that we now have of the difference between knowledge and recognition, the supernal wisdom and the lower wisdom, nature and Torah, right? These are all pairs that reflect the same difference. כשהגיע אברהם לתכלית שלמותו בברית בין הבתרים בהשגתו ועבודתו הקודמים, שהוא עניין בחינת הוויה דילתתא, נתעורר במקור גילוי יותר נעלה שהוא עניין הוויה דילעילא, שהתגלה על ידי מתן תורה. And as we explained in the whole long parable about the dedicated student, because this dedicated student, Avram in this case, he's the dedicated student, he reached the height of what it means to know God through nature, through mundane wisdom. Because of that, it awakened, as it were, within the teacher being God, the revelation of the higher explanation of who I am. And it's almost like, it's in a certain sense, and this is always the way to look at it, when we think of the relationship between tzaddik and God, it's almost like, who's leading who here? Right? We have this idea that it's like in psychology, that when I speak to you, let's say I don't know you, and we begin to speak, and I ask you questions about yourself. So it could turn out that the person who doesn't know you reveals to you deeper and deeper facets of who you are. Now, of course, in the case of God, He knows who He is, but in terms of what He reveals, the questions that we ask, they bring about higher answers. We have to, no, there's one sentence you have to hear here. There's a very important point about this. Yeah. People don't recognize, they don't appreciate the fact that Yiddishkeit is just as much about the questions that we ask as much as the answers that we give. And I don't mean knowledge answers and questions of knowledge. I'm talking about questions of life. Meaning the person standing in a place where he says, "Why God? I don't understand," that awakens a higher revelation of godliness. To put it another way, that when the Jewish people had to face the Holocaust, and the Rebbe wouldn't accept an answer. Why? Because if I give the answer, I'm missing the whole point of the question. The point of the question was to pose to God, who are you, that this is something that could happen in your world? Who are you? And He has to provide an answer. It's up to Him now to, as it were, to reveal something new. So whenever a person is faced with difficulty in his life, he has to know that standing in the question is just as important. It's something that catalyzes a new revelation of God. If you don't stand in the question, if you don't hurt, if there's no pain, nothing happens. You have to understand that. People need to understand that sometimes they experience tremendous pain for a long time, maybe my entire life. If I stop asking why, or I stop asking for a better explanation of what life is about, then I've done disservice to my situation. My situation requires me to stand in the question. And the same thing is true in Torah when you learn Torah. The same thing is everywhere. You have to appreciate the value of the question in bringing down a new answer. Okay, now we can end.